Hey art students, we are going to start painting soon and I want to make sure you have what you need. I'm going to just explain all the items that you need for when we start painting so you are prepared. So first thing is watercolors. You should have ordered these materials through the list that I gave at the very beginning of the school year, or you came and picked up supplies from me. If you picked up supplies from me, you might have gotten a set that's not brand new, but they're totally fine. This is the set that you should have. If you have something similar, that is also fine, but it should be just a set of watercolors with at least 8 colors. I had this Crafts for All acrylic paint set on the order list as well. If you have different acrylic paints, that's fine. Just make sure that you definitely have white and black. We will need that when we do color mixing, and white is the color that we actually will probably use the most. So it's a good idea to have a nice full tube of white paint. Other things you need are paintbrushes. Now this is a set that I put on the materials list to order because it was actually the cheapest one that I could find, and it has way more than you really need. What I'm looking for is that you have 2 brushes, one that's a little bigger, one that's smaller. It's good if one has a nice point and one is a little flat to get bigger areas. But if you just have pointy brushes, that's okay too. You really only need about 2 brushes to get by, but if you have more than that, like the set that I asked you to get, then that's good. If you picked up brushes from me, you probably only got 2. Other things you need is just a jar or a container for water and a palette. Now, I have a palette that looks like this. There's lots of different ways that, that palettes look. A lot of them are flat also. So if you don't have something like this, that's okay. Alternatively, you can use just like a plastic plate that you don't really care about, that you can get paint on. The palette is really only needed for the acrylic paint. For the watercolors, you know, you add the water into the little wells here, and you don't really need a palette. And if you want to mix any colors, the tray on the lid is really good for mixing colors. So you don't really need a palette for the watercolors. It's really just for the acrylic paint. You could also use for a palette just a paper plate. So just make sure that you have something when we start acrylic paints, when we use the acrylic paints, that you can put the paint on and mix the paint. Lastly, you need paper. If you ordered from the list that I sent out, you got a sketchbook like this. Mine's a little bit bigger than the one that you ordered. This is 9 by 12. I think that you guys got a smaller one, but the paper in here is, you see how it says here, 98 pounds. That just means that it's thicker paper. So you really, for painting, you need to have paper that's a little bit thicker. If you got a set from me, then I gave you like 8 loose sheets of thick paper, and that's what you're going to use for painting. You cannot use typing paper. It is too thin and it will not work. It'll just, you know, the water will ruin the paper right away. So make sure you have some thicker type paper, okay? Other than that, I just want to ask that when you show up for art, when we start painting, that you have a nice clean space to work on, that it's not cluttered, and that you have the materials that you need ready. You cannot paint on your bed, you cannot paint on the couch. You really need to be at a desk or a table to do the activities that we're going to do with the paints. All right, you guys.